I just had this vision of like, I want to hit $1 million in revenue. If I can do this, I feel like anybody can. I had reached my threshold at that point. I'm like, I am done. I am not working for anybody else. This clearly is not for me.
And I think we both have this obviously entrepreneurial spirit to like not do that anymore.
I just think some people are just wired to do their own thing. Corporate environments hold that back or slow it down. And I just felt like there's a story here to be told that can help other people similar to me to find their freedom through entrepreneurship.
The idea of having to like be thumbed by a clock really it gives me like the heebie-jeebies.
Once I started the business and things took off, I have not looked back since, and I never will. I just, I feel fortunate and lucky and to be in that position.
Hello, and welcome to Amber Energy, the podcast. Join us as we discuss entrepreneurship, branding, and trending business topics. I'm your host, Amber Jacobs, and I have the experience of working for Fortune 500 as well as in-house for global companies, and I've enjoyed the pleasure of being a part of some of the biggest design agencies in the world. I went full-time in my boutique virtual design firm and want to share those trials and tribulations with you. Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Amber Energy, the podcast. Today, I have my guest, Jason Yormark, who is the founder of Socialistics, a leading social media agency. He's also an author of Anti-Agency, A Realistic Path to a $1 Million Business. Hello, Jason. Thank you for being here today.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Well, why don't you tell everybody a little bit how we know each other and a little bit more about Socialistics?
Sure. Well, Amber and I worked together at a company called Sports Out about 10 years ago, which we were reminiscing about. Seems like it's been a lot longer than that. And we worked together there and then kind of had a little bit of a falling out for a couple of years, but then reconnected, I think, when we both went down our entrepreneurial paths and certainly built a kinship around that. And I've always stayed in contact together since then, just because I think we see the world and see business similarly and always lean on each other for what we're best at. So that's how we know each other. As far as Socialistics, I started that company in 2018. I think I was always an entrepreneurially driven, but for me, later in life was when that really, it just all clicked for me. And it was a combination of just being fed up with corporate America, reporting to other people, and just this desire to build something and do something and not feel like my hands were tied. And my last job petered out. And for me, luckily, I had Socialistics kind of in the background as a side hustle, kind of getting started. And I just took the leap finally, full-time, 100% mentally, physically. In 2019, I think.
Was it 19? I couldn't remember. It was 18 or 19.
I think it was 19. Well, I launched the brand in 2018 as a side hustle and then jumped into it full time in 2019 and haven't looked back since.
That's exciting. I remember when you did that. Fun fact, you were at my wedding.
When was that? What year was that?
I got married in September of 15. And I was like, I am pretty sure you were at my wedding.
Yeah, no, I was there. That was a couple years before. I mean, I'm sure I was still.
And I was at your bachelor tequila night.
You were. That's the last time I've ever thrown up from drinking. But I think 20 shots will do that. And I have never.
I can't believe that was a fun night. Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah, I've not gotten that ridiculous since then.
Yeah, and I was at you and Molly's wedding. So that's how long we've known each other, going on definitely a hard decade, which a lot has happened in a decade, which is amazing and beautiful. A long time since sports art. Yeah. So we had sports art, and then we both went, I went full-time into my AmberDesign in 2016, and then you went full-time in yours not too long after mine. Yeah, you're right. I think there's something we both worked for a lot of like big tech in the greater Seattle area. At agency life, and I think we both have this like obviously entrepreneurial spirit to like not do that anymore.
I just think some people are just wired to do their own thing, to build things, and a lot of times corporate environments kind of hold that back or slow it down, and I think people like us get frustrated in that regard. We like to take big swings and take chances and allow ourselves to fail. And I think I always held back a little bit in those environments and frustrated. And I unfortunately never really had a lot of great managers or mentors in my life. Actually, I would only look back and see one, which was Tom back at Sports Art.
Oh yeah, Tom Meredith.
He was somebody that really influenced me heavily and made a difference. But yeah, I mean, once I started the business and things took off, I have not looked back since, and I never will. I just, I feel fortunate and lucky and to be in that position.
I remember one thing from Tom Meredith is that I'll never forget when he told us, you'll never say no problem, or you always say my pleasure. And for some reason, that has always stuck with me in hospitality. My pleasure.
There were two things that he told me that have always stuck with me. One was a phrase that I've used religiously since, everything speaks, which is pretty self-explanatory, but ultimately everything you do contributes to how people perceive you. So everything from your website, your social media, all the way down to like your email footer, like everything that you do that you put out in the world plays a part in how people perceive you. So that's always stuck with me. And then the other one was,
I like that one.
Don't step over dollars to pick up dimes was another one.
Oh, I like that one. I never heard him say that before.
Yeah, which it's always interesting. And I've used that quite a bit in my travels of entrepreneurship, making sure that you're thinking long term and not being short-sighted about things, especially when it comes to financial investments or how you invest in your business and how you make decisions around who to work with. And so those two things have really served me well, and they came from him.
He was an impactful person at that company. So yeah, that was a good one for him.
Yeah.
Well, and then we're going to segue into all of those amazing learning things that you have as your experience, obviously with 20 years of marketing experience.
Mm-hmm.
That you've recently, well, I guess maybe not so recently. How many years ago did you release the anti-agency book?
I think it's been, it's been a year and a half, 2 years, I think, since I officially launched the book. So to backtrack a little, so I launched Socialistics in 2018, and I think
2022.
There you go. Yeah, so 2 years. In 2021, so roughly 2 years, 2.5 years after going, well, it was 2 years after going full time. I think in my mind, like I just had this vision of like I want to hit $1 million in revenue, annual revenue. To me, that was like, if I could do that, then I mean, oh my God. And it always felt like this crazy number, I've always been very humble in who I am and what I've accomplished, and more so than I probably should be. So it just seemed like a crazy number. But as I continue to get closer to that, it really just became like this rallying cry. And, we'd get close and then we'd take a step back, we'd lose a client. So it kind of, we teetered around it for a while. And I definitely remember we landed this one client which officially put us over $1 million, and just like an emotional wreck, just like, I'm not a crier. I'm not a big crier, but I shed a few tears in that moment just because, I mean, I grew up poor, paycheck to paycheck for the longest time. So we're talking about somebody that, really appreciates what I have. It's not lost on me. I fought and clawed and scratched for everything I've ever had. So it was an emotional moment. I mean, I just, I thought about my mom, who's no longer with us. I thought about her. I mean, we grew up poor, and the sacrifices that she made to help me become the person that I was. And it's just a lot of weight, like all at once. And I think it was like maybe, a couple days after or a week after, I couldn't stop thinking about, my God, if I could pull this off, anybody can. Like, I'm nothing special.
Well, it's like the original, like rags to riches, American dream is what it is. Yeah.
I mean, I just like, I know, I'm like, I pulled this off. I didn't have a lot to start with when I did it. And I just felt like there's a story here to be told that can help other people similar to me to find their freedom through entrepreneurship for real people. Like, that's why I say a realistic path to $1 million business, because you have so many con artists out there that are just trying to make a buck, trying to convince you that, oh, you could just do this and make tons of money. And
I know
just
there's
like,
all those
no.
buzzword, clickbait, bloggy type, whatever.
I wanted to write something that told my story. Look, it's, you put yourself out there like that, and it's sometimes it's hard because, people are gonna, no matter what you do, people are gonna knock you down, or they're gonna say that I don't like this book or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like,
naysayers
I don't
and everything.
Care. I don't care. I'm like, this is my story.
Sometimes those naysayers, give you a little bit of gold. You like want to prove them right. Sometimes that'll put a little chip on your shoulder.
I think what put me over the top and moving forward, I'm like, I don't care if somebody doesn't like the book, because at the end of the day, I'm like, well, this is what I did, and it led to $1 million business. So the proof is in the pudding. So I just felt like I have to write a book, not because I was trying to make money on a book. And trust me, I haven't not made any money on this book. It is just a means to an end. I put something out in the world. I feel like I've given back. And since putting it out there, I really have, it's been great, because so many people have read it and just told me, thanking me, saying they loved it. They loved the way that it was written. It made an impact on their life. And that's all I care about now. So now it's just like, anytime I come across,
for them, but it's more for like, I accomplished a thing. It's a big stinking deal to me, and I'm gonna write this book, and I don't give a shit about everything else.
Yeah. So
now little did my audience knows that actually he's a 2-time author. This is his first book.
That was just a
this one's
list thing.
This is called Mirrors.
Yeah, that was fiction, like a fiction
story.
This
is his first book. So he's actually a 2-time author. Look at this guy. He's nailing it in life.
Yeah. Well, trust me, they are a grind. I had help on the second book a lot. So, and I had a ghostwriter that kind of helped me fill in the gaps. Like, I had the story in my head, and I could get a lot of it. So, but I needed somebody to help me kind of like thicken it up a little bit in terms of how to stretch it into like a book per se. So he helped kind of guide that across. And then I worked with a kind of like a hybrid publisher who helped kind of make it look great and get it in the right places. So I had help, but
well, tell us a little bit more about some of those, like, I don't know, couple 2-3 things that would be like pinnacle pieces of a successful, I don't know, writing and launch of a book.
Yeah.
I'm interested in writing a book. So I'd like to learn more about that.
Well, I think the first part is you have to, what's the why? Like, why am I doing this? If you're doing this for 99% of people, if your why is, I want to make a lot of money writing a book, I'm like,
sorry,
you might want to rethink that. I mean, the margins on them are so thin. So most people don't make money on books. If your answer is more like, you just have this weight of like, I have a story to tell. I have a story to tell, and I just want to see that come to life and put it out in the world. That's a good reason, or if it's going to complement, say, a business. Like there's a part of me that felt like, well, this might open up some doors for Socialistics.
Well, it makes you as like another thought leadership, right?
Yeah.
Another proof point of why someone would hire Socialistics over the next agency.
Or if you want it to open up doors for like speaking engagements and things like that. Sure. So
you did some of that too, though.
Yeah, no. So if those are your reasons, then those are great reasons to go down that path, and healthy reasons to do that. And then the next step is like, okay, now that you've checked the box of the why is right. Sure. Now you need to kind of like take a pass at an initial outline. Do you actually have a story to tell? Kind of really just flesh out what's the story, what's the goal, what do you want the reader to walk away from this thing with? And is there enough there? And that doesn't mean that you have to have like every chapter figured out or every single topic figured out, but is there enough meat on the bone where there's something there? And then once you can check that box, then you have to make a determination around, okay, my why is locked in. I've got a story to tell.
Heck yeah.
How am I going to do this? Most people, some people can probably pull, like, we live in a day and an age where if you're driven and motivated and have the time and have the resources, you can write a book and you can get it made and you can self-publish. Most people that are doing a book that is complementing other things like a business or something, then you probably need a little bit of help. And then it just comes down to, are you willing and able to invest in that help? So that can range from finding like a ghostwriter. When I say ghostwriter, that doesn't mean they're writing the whole thing necessarily. It just means you have somebody in your corner that is not going to have their name on the book.
Sure.
That's going to assist you in fleshing out some of that book. And then so that could be a ghostwriter, that can be an editor. So having that in your corner is really helpful. It makes the process much more realistic, because it took what was kind of a great idea and made it real. And, now you've got timelines, you've got a schedule, you've got somebody typically that has experience in this sort of thing that's going to help you think about things in a way that maybe you wouldn't, because you don't have that experience. So that made it real for me. And then, usually those people are pretty well connected. So then the question becomes, how are you going to self-publish? Are you going to try and find a publisher? Again, finding a publisher is not easy. I did go down that road. I had a little bit of interest, but ultimately, I think similar to my professional path, I just wanted to do my own thing, because I wasn't interested. I didn't care about, I knew I wasn't going to make money on this book. So I'm like, well, why do I need a publisher then? So I did the hybrid path, which was basically a company and what hybrid means is I had to pay them, but they designed the book for me. They helped me get it made. They acted as editor. They helped me get it all set up on all of the books, book selling sites, Amazons and the book Barnes and Nobles of the world, and setting that all up, helping me market it a little bit. So I had a lot of help in my corner to get this story out in the world, and I needed it in order to do it within a realistic timeline. Because for a lot of people, they'll have great intentions. Yeah, I want to do this, and then life gets in the way, and then it just kind of takes a back seat, and you never get it over the finish line. So because I had that help, I was able to get this thing out in the world within, a year, 10, 11 months from start to finish.
That's actually, I think it's for a lot of people, they are intimidated by the idea, maybe overwhelmed at the idea of writing a book. Cause you write a book, but then the idea, how do you possibly, if you're not a writer first, like me, I'm a designer first, and I write words enough to be dangerous, but I'm by no means a wordsmith. And so the idea of writing a book can be lightly intimidating to someone like myself, who I think I have a great story and a wonderful thing that I want to share with the world. But the idea of okay, well, I'm going to write this thing, and then, oh my gosh, the idea of okay, I can design the book cover, hooray, but I can't get it published or marketed or whatever, all these things, all these, check boxes and to-dos. In addition to, I run my own design agency, and I got 2 kids. And you're like, oh, how could I possibly get it all done? But I really want to do this thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are 3 elements that go into making it realistic: time, talent, and I would say resources. You have to basically determine, of those 3 things, what is it that you have. I would throw a 4th in there, which is determination, tenacity, your ability to, because writing is really, you have to, I've been told by a lot of successful writers that the key to getting a project like that done, whether it's a screenplay or a book, you have to set aside an hour or 2 hours a day, every day, same time, and just write. You need to turn off the distractions. Don't allow yourself to look at the emails. Don't allow yourself to get pulled into other things. That's your writing time. Focus. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you write. It could be horrible. And you're not supposed to get in your own way. Just write. And that doesn't mean everything that you put on the screen or on paper is going to be used, but it forces you to get into a rhythm and a routine. And the volume of everything that you create in those time blocks will inevitably lead you to ultimately great things. So that's tough. A lot of people maybe they don't have the time. Maybe they don't
make time. Yeah. I think it's about making time. If that's something, because people make time for things that are prioritized for them, right? Sure. So people make time for a lot of things in life.
Well, it's really about how you want to spend your time. It's do you want to do that? Do you enjoy writing? What's interesting, and I'll admit this, I don't read books at all, hardly. Every once in a while I'll read a book. I'll read short form articles and stuff all the time. I consume a lot of that sort of stuff. But reading a book, laying in bed and reading a book, all I'm thinking about is this chapter almost over so I can go on to something else? I can't do it. So a lot of people are like, well, if you don't read like that, then how do you write a book? And there's some truth to that, but that just points the picture of I needed help. Like I knew that I don't know enough to do this the way that I want to do it. So I'm going to pull in experts that are going to help me, craft this in a way that makes it everything that I want it to be. And I needed that help. And I think it worked because nobody's ever told me that it was bad or that they didn't like it. I've got nothing but positive reviews. And I think that's because two things. One, it's genuine and authentic to what I've experienced. Two, it's honest. It's real. I have actionable things in there. Like, this is what I did. It's personal. And then the third is I had people in my corner to help me make it be great. So.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head. It's that it's an honest, genuine, personal story. And it actually happened, which is like the fun thing. It's interesting that you say that because like my husband, for example, he will read every single night off his Kindle every single night to turn himself off, to put himself to bed. Yeah. Every night. And I'm just like, my day, I've like exhausted I've been up since probably 5 a.m. I've worked before the kids get up. I've got the kids ready for school or daycare. I've worked all day and get the kids home from daycare, preschool, and like I've done the kid thing and So by like 9 o'clock, I'm like, I'm done. Yeah. Like put me to bed.
I don't have the patience. I don't have the patience to do it. So.
Well, you asked me on a Saturday what I want to do. I'm like, well, do you want to sit here and read for 2 hours, or do you want to go for a hike for 2 hours? I'm like, well, I'll probably pick the hike like every time.
Yeah, I can think of plenty of other things I'd rather do than read about. Every once in a while, I'll come across something that I feel compelled to read. Like there was a book about how to sell an agency or things that are really specific to my world. Those things and oftentimes I would say now I only read like things that are educational or like things that'll help me live a better life personally or professionally. Like fictional things, I'm like, I'll watch a movie. I'll go watch a show.
I'm kind of the same way. I'd rather learn something. I'm actually I like history. I like reading books that have like historical relevance to them. As I'm sitting with podcasts, if I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll read some or listen to some like news podcasts. But then otherwise, if I'm like in a long road trip, I'd rather read something about a really cool historical character with a storyline, in there. Like you maybe know this, and this about this historical person or character. Yeah. But then here's like the full out, historical evidence of the da-da-da-da-da. And I find that really interesting to learn about.
That's why I love podcasts. Because podcasts, you can multitask. If you're driving and you're going a long way, you can consume that while you're kind of tied up. Like you can't do anything else.
I know. I'm driving in a car to and from Washington. I just did that Wednesday night. I went, my husband and I, we drove tag teamed Port Orchard, Washington to Nampa, Idaho in like 8.5 to 10 hours. I don't even know how long it took us. We didn't get home till like midnight Wednesday night. But exactly, this is the types of podcasts you listen to when you've got that much time to kill when you're on the road, or maybe when you're doing lawn work, or I don't know, pass the time. Or if you still commute, some people still commute if they got in-person jobs or service type jobs like a nurse or something. You got to be in person for. So many people still commute, so I don't have a lot of passive time besides when I'm driving to and from Washington State or going to a national park. Was another one we went to recently. Went to Yellowstone and the Tetons.
Well, the podcasts are great because when you go on those long trips, you just listen while you're driving.
And I can't like read a book or do anything else when I'm driving. Right. I get sick, probably like a lot of people do. So I'm like, I'm literally sitting here.
Yeah. Well, that's why so when I did the book, a hybrid company that I worked with connected me with somebody to create an audio version of it. So, because I knew I wanted
some like really good, like,
well, they gave me voice. 20 or 30 people to listen to. And I picked and everybody's like, well, why didn't you read it? I'm like, I don't have a voice that anybody wants to listen to for, 3, 4, 5 hours. So not to mention like having to just read through that and get that all right. But they lined me up with somebody and recorded that, and it's cool. It's just cool. So like now if I'm on Reddit or if I'm just in all of these places and somebody says, oh, I'd love to read your book. I'm like, oh, do you want a hard copy? Do you want a digital copy? Do you want an audio book? It's just like, it's good to have options.
Super good.
Yeah. I mean, I give it away more than anything. Like I just, anytime somebody asks me that, they're interested in the book, I'll be like, oh, here's, if they want a hard copy, I'd be like, okay, you can go. It's cheap on Amazon. But if you want a digital copy or an audio copy, I give this out for free.
No, for sure. And I'm grateful for my copy. I love my signed copy version. So I appreciate that.
No problem.
Yeah, no. What would be some of the maybe like one or two big things like learned about yourself or learned about your biggest takeaway from learning around writing a book and launching a book? Maybe one thing about learning about yourself. Let's start with that one.
Yeah. I think that I think the biggest takeaway from me in going down that path was just the realization of how much whether it's your failures or just everything that you experience in your life, just kind of contribute to who you inevitably become. I think a lot of people fear failing or, like here's a great example. For the longest time, I always felt embarrassed by my track record of my career because I had a lot of jobs. Like if I made a resume from the time I graduated college to now, well, not so much now, but maybe, 7 or 8 years ago, like there was like a lot of jobs.
I know.
I've been fired, I've been laid off, you name it, like just a lot of movement. And I always felt like, oh my God, like who's ever going to hire me? They're going to look at this and think that this guy can't keep a job. And it wasn't until I really started to take a harder look at other people on LinkedIn and their history and what they've been through, specifically marketers or people that do similar, like creatives. And I think the realization that I came to, I'm like, actually, it's pretty normal, like marketing and design and like it's a flavor of the month kind of thing. And companies like to swap things out. It's why agencies exist. So marketers don't stay at companies for a long time. And I think once I saw that, wow, everybody else is kind of the same way, I realized that I didn't really do anything wrong. There was nothing wrong with me. It's just the industry that I was in and what I did for a living lends itself to a lot of revolving door action, which so I got it but I didn't like it. I wanted to stick around for, longer, but I think there's a part of it too, that I get bored easy too. Like I think it's very common in our
industry. Like there's some industries where some people stay like 20, 30 years. Like they'll stay at the same place and get their pension and retirement and
for sure.
Have like these places where they stay for, a long, long time and retire from.
My wife's a perfect example of that. She's been at the same company for 30 years. 30 years. Like I can't even fathom that.
And then I'm the same with you. Like I've been working for a lot of design agencies. I've had a couple of tours at Microsoft, and I've been hired, fired, laid off, let go. I was a graduate during the last recession of 2008. Yeah. And you want to talk about grit and character building, baby? That'll do it.
For sure. Well, I think, and so to loop it back to your original question was related to that, I always felt like I was always a breadth guy, not a depth guy. I like to do a lot of different things. I like to start a thing and I like it to have a finish line and then move on to the next thing. I don't like doing the same thing over and over and over every single day. That's not how I was wired. And I always thought that was a weakness. Like I was at Microsoft for 5 years and I was always afraid to admit that. And it wasn't until later in life and kind of going through this process of writing the book and realizing like, no, that's actually a strength. There's plenty of people. You need both. You need both kinds of people. You need people that have incredible depth and are willing to do the same sorts of things all the time. And you need people that can do a lot of different things and can go in and out of things. So that's not a weakness, it's a strength. And once, so it's just coming to the realization of like doubling down on what makes you who you are and why you're good at what you do. And everybody's different. And so I think it was the combination of just finding confidence in things that I think earlier in my life I shied away from. And going through the book and fleshing out these stories and talking about how I built what I built. And look, if I can do this, I feel like anybody can. That's willing to put in the time and the effort and has something. Everybody has a superpower. Everybody has something that they're just naturally drawn to or are good at, and so that's what you lean into. And look, not everybody's wired to be an entrepreneur, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some people need structure. Some people need, I'm punching in, I'm punching out. I need structure around my professional and my personal life. I need them to be completely separate. And some people are like, no, I want freedom. I want to do what I want when I want. Those are the great things. And the challenges are, am I going to get a paycheck this week? And like losing clients and like I'm responsible for 6 or 7 other people and their livelihood. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both paths. It just depends on how you're wired.
how it's going to fuel your fulfillment, I think also is part of it too.
Yeah.
Working for other folk wasn't fulfilling enough to me.
No. And I've gotten to the point now where I'm so far removed from it that the thought of it is just like, no way, because I'll say no to clients, or I'll say no to things, or I don't want to even be in situations where I ever get a taste of that, like employee reporting to somebody type of thing. Yeah. I'm like, I don't want to be around any of that.
The idea of having to like be thumbed by a clock.
Yeah.
Really like, it gives me like the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's like, even like now that I'm so removed from a commute and traffic, anytime I get stuck in traffic, I'm immediately like livid. Like, what is happening right now? Why am I not moving? Like, and then I forget. I'm like, oh, remember, like you did this for 2 or 3 hours every day, and it's just like you get so far removed from it, and then I was just like, why did I do this? Like, I mean, look, some people don't have a choice, but it's like when you forget, when you're removed from it for so long.
It's so funny. I've been full-time in my agency working from home since 2016. Yeah. And my husband has been working from home because he's a regional sales rep, now sales director, since 2013. He's been with his company. And so this whole, like, we've both been working from home for a pretty long time. So when it all went down, whatever happened in 2020-ish with the COVID thing, like everybody else, that was all new to them. But for my husband and I was like, well, this is like every day for us. Like, there's no change. Yeah. But I can't, prior to that though, I commuted to Sports Art, I commuted to Microsoft, I commuted to various agencies in downtown Seattle. For the first 7 years of my career, I did that. And I think it was obviously it was necessary. It was very necessary to get your, stars and stripes in the design agency world, to learn how it's all done, to learn how to be, a good designer amongst the crazy that is agency life in the greater Seattle area. I've had the opportunity of working with a lot of amazing agencies, but I learned a heck of a lot by working for those folk, and by working a couple of tours at Microsoft, and, working full time at Sports Art and other places. And also going between full time and, direct as a contractor, and then through placement agencies, maybe at points in my younger career, all of that led to learning an awful lot about how to go off and go do your own thing. And so it's definitely valuable to do it that way. I did not know that when I graduated Western that I was going to go off and go be an entrepreneur someday. That was not what I thought I was going to do. But
once you get later in life, you
discover. You discover.
Like, actually, this experience probably contributed to like me getting to where I'm at, and that's pretty common. Once you get older, you start realizing that.
Well, it's kind of funny you said that earlier about the realization of your failures in life. I too was sort of embarrassed for a moment in time of my track record. I remember applying to Sports Art, I remember like, here's my resume.
Yeah.
Because like my resume was like, all these different contract gigs spattered in with maybe 1 or 2 employment gigs, but it was also post-recession. So, everyone was kind of doing this for, the years leading up to getting employed at Sports Art in like 2013 or 2015. Yeah. And so I remember being like, here's my resume.
Yeah, you would usually get pretty creative about like, oh, I wasn't there long enough. Let's just
I would start deleting.
Maybe I'll massage the dates between these two, and we'll like close the gap a little bit. And...
I remember doing that so much earlier in my career.
Yeah, for sure.
My LinkedIn was just like my first like 10 years of LinkedIn or after post Western Washington is like, oh my God, did she ever keep a job? I remember my dad
consolidated.
Being like, for reals?
I consolidated everything. If you look at my LinkedIn, you only see about 5 things, but I'm like, there's actually like 10 or 15 easily.
Yeah, precisely. I remember my dad being like, can you just go get a job? I'm like, I have a job, Dad. He's like, no, like a real one, like one where you can stay at, like have a steady paycheck and a pension or a 401k matching, Amber. I'm like, I don't know if I'm built that way, Dad.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
But my dad's been at a place, 2 places for 25 years or 20 years each, and finally retired this year. And that was the path he chose.
Yeah. That is not common anymore. And I don't think it ever will be. I think.
No, it's a generational thing, perhaps. I think it's a 2-way street, a little bit, perhaps, of the loyalty going both ways with employers and employees. There's a lack of trust between the two of them.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Yes. So, all right. So you now have a book. You've been out for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You've got a successful, well, how do you say now? You said you should have rewritten the book to say a couple $1 million business, but you've got a successful business and a book and a podcast. What else would be another, I don't know, maybe another tip or success, one little nugget about your book about how to build a successful business? Maybe that would be a nice little thing.
Yeah, one of my favorite chapters, and I think that one of the biggest takeaways that people are getting out of it is what I call building a runway for yourself, because most people don't have the means to just leave a job and start a business. Goodness. And that's definitely not the direction that the book takes you. And I wasn't in that place either. So it's really just about building a runway for yourself. If you're truly entrepreneurial driven and you can't take that leap, you need that paycheck, then you need to kind of build some momentum for yourself, get the train rolling on the tracks, figure out what it is that, ultimately you want to build and do, whether it's a marketing agency, whether it's a service-based business, whether it's, a product, you want to start a restaurant, whatever that is, there's a path to creating that brand and that side hustle while you hold on to that job, creating momentum for yourself, putting yourself out in the world, build a brand, build a website, start creating content, start putting things out in the world. That's what I did. I built Socialistics. I put it out there. I started blogging. I started pushing out social media. I started taking on gigs for either like 50% of what I would normally charge, or even maybe a free gig in exchange for their testimonials or their case studies, because I could do that because I didn't need really the money from that, because I was still kind of had a job.
Yeah.
So just getting that machine rolling, creating that momentum, getting into the Google sphere so that people start to find you when they're typing in search terms that relate to what you do in the area that you do it in, creating that momentum. So you kind of, if you visualize it, it's like that train starts moving. So then, whether it's 6 months down the road or 12 months down the road, at some point now assuming that you've created momentum for yourself and it's headed in the right direction. Look, life throws shitballs at you. You don't know. And it happened to me. My last job, I thought it was going to be a great job, but long story short, the owner of the company was having an inappropriate relationship with somebody on my team, and that was influencing their role. And I'm just like, I'm done. I'm out. Yep. Like, this is it. Like, I can't do this anymore. Oh. And luckily for me, when that moment happened, that train was already moving. Socialistics was already in motion, taking that leap into doing that, because I had reached my threshold at that point. I'm like, I am done. I am not working for anybody else. This clearly is not for me. I had put in the time and the effort to kind of get that machine rolling. So then when I took that leap, it didn't feel as scary. It wasn't as risky. And I was able to then, from a mindset standpoint, go in fearless. And that is why it took off, because in my previous attempts, I carried too much fear. Oh, what happens if I don't make enough money and this and that? And I think those feelings psychologically held me back. But in this case, I was ready. I lowered the risk. I had something in motion, and I was able to enter it 100% confident, not scared. And that, I think, was the reason why I finally put all the pieces together and it took off. So creating a runway for yourself is the way to make it happen when you can't just quit your job, when you don't have tons of money or investments to throw at something from the start. And that pretty much defines the majority of people. And that's who the book is for, is those types of people.
Yes. That's why it resonates with me. Yes. It's interesting that,
and I taught in the book, and
building that side hustle, right?
Yeah, I build steps. I like, these are the things I did tactically. Like I did this. I really try to make it actionable.
Reflect about your past too. Like I kind of thinking back, I'm like, man, sports art was also sort of my launching point.
Sure.
And it was like a rip off the Band-Aid moment. And maybe it was like the best thing. Obviously, it's like the best thing that could have ever happened to me. But in the moment, it's like, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, don't have a job now. Like, this is awful. I just got married. This is terrible. But here I am. Look at me now. Here I am, 8 years later. And it was a launching point. I remember asking my husband, like, give me like 6 months to do the thing. I'm going to go independent. Like, I'm tired of not being in control of my destiny. That's it. I've had enough. I'm going to go into business for myself, and away we go.
No, for sure.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah. It's been a wild road for sure. So no, I'm really grateful because it's been fun to sort of, we had our time at Sports Art, we went apart, and then over the years, we come back together, we kind of go off on our own tangents, and then they've probably come back together, half a dozen times over the last, 8 years at least, throughout business, which is just a beautiful thing. Wow. I love making connections and following up on connections and seeing how people are doing. And it's fun to watch people's careers. And, you've been in business longer than I, but it's fun even just in the 20 years that I've been in business to watch people grow and change and learn and try new things. It's been a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
You as a colleague.
Yeah. That's why I love podcasts like this, where you just get to learn about people's history and what got them to where they're at. And I think, even at my age and where I'm at, like, I'm still learning. I haven't figured everything out. So I think as long as you approach life that way, then you're going to be successful.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good note. Never stop learning. Keep growing. I think that's a good notion. Anything else you want to kind of say to the audience before we wrap it up today about your book or you or what you got going on?
No, I just think, that anything's possible. You just have to figure out what your path is. And certainly this book is designed to help people achieve that. And, for those that are listening, like I said, I give it away for free. So if you go to my personal website, Yormark.com/free-book, you can get a free copy. I have a cool video that I spun together about it, and you fill out a little form, and it'll automatically send you a free digital copy. So I give it away. All I ask is people leave a review if they read it, but free of charge.
Well, thank you, Jason. That's wonderful. I encourage everybody to download his book.
Yeah.
And I really thank you for your time. I value your friendship, our relationship over the last 8 years. And thank you for being a guest today.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. Tune in next time for another episode of Amber Energy, the podcast. Cheers.